Mining was a dirty job. You would never know what the next dark twist or turn was hiding. Deep down in the darkest corners of the earth, this was your home. Striking the naked stone and dirt. The familiar rhythm of breaking rock and your heavy breaths was almost comforting in its eerie music. The heat of your surroundings was making you dizzy. You coughed as you inhaled some of the dust before lighting another torch, carefully sticking it onto the wall. The minimal light radiated more heat. Sighing, you swiped thick droplets of sweat from your brows, wondering just how black your face was by now from the dirt and grime. Blinking until your eyes no longer hurt, you focused on what was ahead of you. There, just out of the torch's light, was a pale glint. Gold, you thought. The material wasn't good for armor, or weapons, or tools even, but it certainly was useful if you ever were to reach the mythical Nether. Smiling to yourself, you thought of the stories your grandpa had read to you from your father's journal, about how he ventured into the Nether and slayed a being called the Wither. However, as you took a step forward, the ground beneath you shook. Your heart jumped as you just barely managed to grab your freshly placed torch before you fell into a dark abyss. You hit your head on hard ground and were knocked out for a moment. When you came to only seconds later, you frantically fell into the pitch-black darkness, trying to find your torch. Your fingers wrapped around something hard and wooden, and you gripped it tightly. Taking out your flint and steel, you hit it over and over until a blazing star was born. You looked around yourself, just barely able to make out your surroundings, never having dug this deep. You were afraid. You couldn't hear anything. Your heartbeat, your breathing, and the droning noises of the cave made it impossible to fight the rising panic within you. Thinking fast, you placed the torch on the ground and pulled off your backpack, counting your rations. If you were lucky, it would last you 2 days. Your lips quivered. You were about to have a panic attack. Who knew what monsters lied beneath this place? Somehow you managed to gulp down a large ball of spit, too afraid to take only a single step forward. The notion quickly changed when an aggressive hiss echoed from behind you. You turned. 8 red glowing eyes stared back at you, just mere meters away. Your blood froze. Any move could be your last. You took your first step, and in taking it, you had sealed your fate. Or at least, any other avenue you could have walked. Knowing there were already countless infinite alternate universes where you had acted slightly different. But this was your decision. Your panicked, scared, frightful decision. There was nothing else to do anymore but run. Your heavy steps echoed in the darkness surrounding you. The fear felt like it was giving you wings. You ran faster than you ever did before, deeper and deeper into the darkness. Too scared to even scream. until you round a corner, and a bright light blinded you as you rammed into something, someone, soft and warm. However, your brain was no longer able to work through the stress of the past hour, finally allowing you the sweet embrace of nothingness. Bakugou had to admit, when he heard the rushing of footsteps, he expected to be met with the foul smell of an angry zombie, or maybe even that Enderman he had looked at by accident 3 days ago. But not a girl so frightened she passed out the moment she touched him. He gulped, unsure of what to do. You were covered in dust and coal. The backpack filled with food and small pieces of iron. Carefully he looked down into the cavern he had run out of. Nothing was chasing you, luckily. So he sighed in relief. You didn't seem to have any open wounds, or at least he didn't see you bleeding from anywhere. Blushing, he pressed his head against your chest, hearing your shallow breaths and beating hard. So you were still alive. Good. Or maybe bad, depending on what kind of person just ran into him. Throwing you over his shoulder, he began his way back. The blonde had dug out into a mineshaft that was loosely connected to the village he had been busy fortifying the past couple of weeks. As per usual, the villagers didn't pay him any mind. The humanoid creatures, while able to craft tools and weapons, lacked the mental capacity to understand anything but their chosen work. Bakugou carried you outside the cobblestone walls of what he referred to as his village, towards a local pond. He sat you down on the mud, before awkwardly staring at your dirty self. Bakugou didn't want you to be in his home when you were covered in dirt and sweat, but also he was too modest to take off your clothes and wash you. After 5 minutes of contemplation, he gave up, quickly taking off your backpack, unbuttoning your blue shirt, and pulling off your pants. His head flushed. He had never seen another person, especially naked, and of the opposite gender. Taking a sponge, he carefully washed off the dirt and grime that covered you, sighing deeply whenever he went to clean out the sponge, only to return to your sleeping form. Finally he was done, only to then realize that it didn't feel right putting you back into your dirty, ragged clothing. Bakugou closed his eyes for a moment, bracing himself, and then picked you up in his strong arms, taking good care to not look down onto the woman lying in his hands. Avoiding the gaze of the villagers, not that they cared, he slipped into his house at the northern end of the village. They quickly shoved you inside one of his larger shirts, even slipping you into one of his boxers. Then Bakugou realized, where should he put you? Panicking, he quickly crafted a small sleeping bag, not for you, but for himself. Whatever nightmare had gotten you to run into him, the least he could do was make you wake up in a warm bed. You came to surrounded by fluff. In your sleep-drunken state, you didn't immediately make the mental connection that this was wrong. Quietly, you hummed into your pillow. It smelled a bit weird. Not like you, but more like someone else's. It took you drifting back to sleep and then slowly waking up again twice before you realized that this didn't make any sense. Cautiously, you continued to pretend to sleep, carefully listening to any sound. It was warm, and you felt no wind, so you were inside. There was the humming noise of villagers outside. a quiet noise of a burning fire from a furnace. You tested the air. Whoever was using it was cooking meat, as the delicious smell of perfectly seasoned mutton entered your nostrils. And then you heard a loud snore from somewhere under you. And instantly you were fully awake. Opening your eyes, you took in the unfamiliar scenery. It was a quaint little house made out of spruce and birch planks. The structure was supported by heavy-looking oak logs. It had only one room. With a bad feeling in your gut, you slowly crept to the side of the bed, where you heard the snoring. Looking over it, you saw another human. Male, handsome, blonde, and sleeping on a seemingly hastily crafted sleeping bag. It was then you noticed that not only were you clean, but also you wore different clothes. Wait, did he... You blushed. Why were you blushing? Judging by all what seems to be happening, he was the one to have saved your life. The least you could do was... You gulped and got out of bed, before stepping towards the window. The sun was just rising above the horizon. The villagers, as expected, were already running about. This place looked nice. It certainly beat your own little home that had been carved into the side of a mountain. By the builders, you were pathetic. You had been so focused on observing the village, you didn't realize your strange roommate had woken up. "Thank thee for you're still here," he shouted, and you shrieked in terror and surprise. "What's wrong, little stray?" He laughed. Then your savior got on his feet and slowly approached you, both hands raised in a defensive pose. "Don't worry, ain't gonna hurt ya." You furrowed your brows. I mean, you could have by now, so that's obvious. The man blinked and then laughed. "Ha! Name's Bakugou Katsuki." You told him your name. "Nah, Stray's better." Then he crossed his arms. "So, what now?" You shrugged. "You could live here." You deadpanned. I mean, I already saw you naked, so might as well." You blushed. Did he really have to blurt it out like that? "Only if you help me haul my stuff from wherever my home is to here." He smiled. "Good thing I have a cartographer." You followed Bakugou outside into a small custom-built spruce hut. In it, a villager with a monocle was vigorously sorting papers and books. The creature looked at both of you dumbfounded. Then Bakugou slammed a few emeralds on the table. It blinked before giving the blonde an empty map. "Easy peasy lemon squeezy," he said. You spent the rest of the day writing down various facts about the area where your base was. Thankfully, Bakugou also had enough materials to craft a compass. Slowly, you began drawing them into the map. Bakugou continued fortifying the village. He returned to you late in the evening after having washed himself in the lake. "Hey," you mumbled as a greeting while not looking up from the map. He walked up to you and sat down. You had been lying on his bed as you drew into the pieces of paper. But he then snatched them from under you, leaving a long black line on the map. "Hey!" you shouted in protest. "I know where that is," he said in surprise. "What do you mean?" "Was cutting trees there." You blinked. That explained why your forest seemed to get smaller every day. "I knew I saw light behind those tree lines." You huffed. "Then why didn't you check it out?" Bakugou shrugged. "My backpack was full, so I put it on the back burner and forgot about it." You sighed. "Well, then, you can guide me there." He huffed. "What?" "Not doing this for free. Already saved your life. And I'm letting you live here. For free, I might add." You narrowed your eyes and puffed up your cheeks in annoyance. So what? You want me to just forget my items and tools? Well, do you have diamonds? You frowned. No. Do you have gold? No. Do you have emeralds? I have iron. Bakugou laughed and pointed outside. They're called iron golems. I think I have enough of that. Trying to change the subject, you interjected. Where do the villagers even get the iron from to make them? He grinned. You're not gonna distract me. You sighed in defeat. I think I know what guys like you want. Now he was the one to look confused. Until you quickly leaped up and pressed your lips onto his. He blushed hard and made a noise somewhere between an aroused huff and an uncomfortable groan. Your tongue brushed against his lips as he allowed your entrance into his wet mouth. But just as quickly as you started, you ended it just as fast, leaving him a blushing, heaving mess. You were so glad he was attractive. Otherwise, you may not have been able to bring up the courage to do that. Why did you stop? He complained. I was just getting into it. Help me carry my stuff into the village, and I'll do much more than that. He got up on his feet, quickly grabbing your map and your hand. Then what are we waiting for?